Hello YouTube, I am Galadite74. It's been a while since I've sat down and recorded a video for you guys, but today, here we are. You're watching this. If video's gone up, I've recorded one for you. This is going to be the start of the top 10 series I do. Now, I'm officially done uploading any draft games until Generation 9 comes out, sorry. And this is going to be our send-off to Generation 8. Last generation, I did a top 10 series to end it off based around my draft career. The whole point of my YouTube career is to just, this is my journey through drafts. I want you guys to experience it, and hopefully you guys get some enjoyment along the way. It's always been that way, and it's always going to stay that way. At least, I hope it does. And this is going to be no different. We're going to look back on the generation of Galar and look at my top 10 favorite teams that I've used this generation. The way this works is just simply, we're just going to rank the top 10 teams I thought. I did roughly 20 leagues this generation, which I know is like low to some standards, high to others. So not every team that I had this generation will make the list. Also, not including tournaments, just simply I don't have enough time with most of the mods to really get a good grasp on the team. So I'm just going to put that off to the side. So just a few rules before we get into this. I'm going to try not to make this intro too long. I did a set of 4 videos last generation when I did this. I'm going to be doing the same thing this time, starting with today's video, top 10 teams. I know what my final video is going to be. However, I do need some top 10 series ideas. I already have some brewing in mind that I might end up going with, but if you guys want to comment down below if there's anything you want to see, top 10 series wise for like draft stuff, I would be happy to, hear. All ears, comments are below. My Twitter's also below. My Discord tag's probably not, but I might add it. Any way to get in contact with me and just let me know if you have any cool ideas, that would be really appreciated a lot. And finally, the way I'm ranking these teams, it's very heavy on how much I enjoyed the team, but there is a bit of a success factor to it. So oftentimes, if I enjoy a team equally, one will be above the other because of the success I had with it. So that's just how we're doing this. With this long introduction out of the way, we're gonna finally get into this video. I hope you guys enjoy. I have one honorable mention today, so it's technically a top 11. So we're getting into that right now. First off, for our honorable mention, it is going to be CGT Season 1. Now, I just couldn't put this in the list, although out of all the teams that weren't on my top 10 list, this was the only team that remotely had a chance to make the list. I basically, 11 teams picked 10, right? But I still wanted to at least mention this team. CGT was arguably the most competitive league that I've ever been a part of, and that premise alone is something very exciting to me personally. And I know you guys knew that by, watching my videos throughout CGT. The support was absolutely amazing. I think the whole league itself was amazing. It was run by Addison, so shouts to her. And unfortunately, we did not do that great in that league. This was the team we had used. I used a few mons that I'm pretty comfortable with, and other mons that were new. And quick positives and negatives with this team. On paper, this team can actually do a lot of versatility in the sense of Latios can do a lot. Core Swampert have a lot of versatility to them, as well as Snorlax or Bombi. At least, well, Bombi's got 2 sets, but they're both really good. Point being is that I had options. The bad news is, I personally felt as if with this team, I had Core Swampert as my defensive core, so they were forced to be defensive, which is fine. However, I noticed that throughout the season, and this was a very consistent factor, that I was relying on Lottie to make sure that every week a setup sweep group wouldn't break through Swampert or Core and just hope I had an end game past that point. And it was very inconsistent and was very rough. Also, some of these mons were a little bit underwhelming. I think Conk at the beginning of the gen was amazing. However, it sort of fell off near the end, as I'm sort of alluding to this list a little bit later. And that was a big thing. Jinx had nothing to do on this team. Bisharp's pretty bad in draft. Vileplume was sort of whatever. So you kind of get the gist there. Again, it was a fun team. The league, again, very competitive, so people knew how to draft too. So even if I made a good team, everybody's got a great team. So that's kind of how I looked at this. and it's our honorable mention here. So we're going to move on to the actual list at number 10. This is going to be Auto's World Cup. This is the only other league that like kind of scales to CGT in terms of competitiveness. These two, and there's a third league that's like definitely third, but kind of is up there in terms of competitiveness. So our two teams are just back to back right here. But this is number 10. I made transactions with this team, and I initially didn't like this team at all. I thought it was hot garbage. However, I made transactions that made this team fit my playstyle a bit more. I put mons on there I'm a bit more comfortable with, particularly the Vanillux. And I'm a big fan of that mon, and it added a lot to this team personally. This team is not on YouTube. I did not upload this at all. I might make a big package for this, but I'm not quite sure yet. Pretty busy, so might not have the time. Quickly, the good and bad about this team. This is NatDex Showdown, so just for reference there. The good thing was that this team had a lot of utility, and I had a lot of mons that I was pretty comfortable with. Vanillux, I had a really good pivot in Eelektross. I have a newfound love for Mega Blastoise, as that mon can soar to just 1v1 anything, which with my playstyle is extremely valuable. And Pharaoh's on this team. Obviously, you're going to be seeing Pharaoh quite a bit. Lando Blaze is pretty strong. Negatives of this team, I think this team was a little bit limited in terms of win conditions. I think Lando and Blaze were my top two, and then we start getting a bit into niche territory. Like, there was one game that I won with Bulk Up Grimmsnarl, one with Life Orb Drudigan, and I think my team was just good enough to where I can sort of get away with that, and I had options to support these win cons, but it was still a little bit shaky. Also, I have a few Ferrothorn teams on here, spoilers, and most of them are built very well around Pharaoh. This team did not support that mon as well as I thought it did. My team has a pretty big fire weakness here. I had to patch it up a little bit with these transactions, Drudigan and Hariyama. So, Ferrothorn, I don't feel like I was getting the most out of that mon like I usually do. And considering it was like my second round pick, I think that's a little bit not the coolest. But I think we held our own in this league. I did end up enjoying this a lot more than I initially was in the end. And it is our number 10 team. So we can move on to number 9. And this might be a shocker if you watch my channel. This is UPA Season 2. Now, when I was drafting this, when I had this team initially, I like bitched about this team every week. I did not like it, really. And looking back at it, I still am not the biggest fan of this team. So why is it number 9? Well, two reasons. One, I had more success with it than the other two. I won a championship with this team, so that has a little bit of weight to it. B, and the big thing was I really did start enjoying this team a lot more when the playoffs came around. I felt like I loosened myself up a bit in building. I did make transactions with this team as well, and the mons I picked up, Goodra, Aerodactyl, and Titan Null, all had a big impact in playoffs, and I think that is what sort of made this team a little bit better. I think the big weakness with this team is my high tiers. I'm not a big fan of Jirachi personally. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just not a mon I'm really great with. Hippo felt a little bit forced onto this team. Scolipede is a G. I love Scolipede, and that was a lot of fun with this mon. However, when Scolipede's like your only high tier you enjoy on the team, that's going to be a little bit rough. The good things, however, I think this mid-tier core is probably was the strongest in the league, with Prim, Shandy, Rotom-Mow, Goodra, and Aerodactyl, and I guess Pangoro to an extent. These mons are very, very strong. They can easily come to every game, and it wouldn't really be weird, and they all have their certain roles on this team. Prim Shandy I thought was a little bit weird at first, and it still is, but it kind of made room to be like, okay, Prim can be bulky, Shan can be a breaker, and then vice versa, depending on the matchup. And I still had other mons to support that as well. So it was pretty strong, all things considered. Type Null had its good matchups, and Lapras was a very fun mon as well. Low-key, definitely a mon I could see myself drafting again. I brought that mon quite a bit, and it was just a really fun season. Again, we did end up winning a championship with this team, and it is on YouTube, so you know, want to go watch it, it's there. But that is our number 9. I guess we can just keep moving on to number 8. There's sort of like 3 tiers with these teams. There's the clear top 4 in my opinion, 5 through 8, and then 9 and 10 were a little bit tough. So there's a little bit of a jump here. Number 8 is PTL Civil War, or PTL Season 4. Now this was at the very beginning of the gen, so this team does look a little bit ass. And obviously if this team was used right at this moment, it would be ass. This is Blaze Cinderace, not Libero. And this was sort of before the first DLC came out. And unpopular opinion, but I loved that meta quite a bit. I'm glad it's gone, but I'm glad it was there too. The limited decks, I thought it brought some creativity out. And this team sort of shows that. Vanillix, again, recurring theme. I also did win a championship with this team. And I was a part of a 20-man draft, or 18 or 20-man draft. And it was a free draft, so you could just pick up whatever, assuming it wasn't like banned, you know what I mean? And that's what this was. So I picked up Cinderace because I really wanted to use it. I gave up on stuff like Polt too, if you look back at it. So it is what it is. And then I picked up a few mons that I thought were going to be synergized well. And considering there were so many people in this draft and so little mons, I think we did an amazing job personally. We got Linoone like as the final pick of the draft, and obviously Linoone's not the most amazing mon ever, but you gotta think back early in the gen where people are scrapping at the bottom of the barrel. We got Linoone last. We got Liepard that turned into Vanillix. Vanillix went undrafted, which is insane to me. And then we got really good low tiers like Golisopod. We got Silvally Steel, which was like the last Silvally to go for some reason. The draft was really weird. Season was very fun. I had a lot of fun with this team personally, and because it was early gen, I was able to just bring things and it would be okay. I had a lot of really fun games with that Cinderace early, learning the mon. Same with Weezing. Rhyperior, really cool mon. Rotom fit this team really well, and I'm really glad it ended up being like a core staple of this team. This was a season where halfway through we switched from, I think we gave it DLC moves the second half, which was a little bit weird, but again, made for an interesting experience building, first half versus second half of the league. But I had a lot of fun with this team personally, and I personally think this team was good for the time. So, it's number 8. Number 7 is going to be UPBA Season 2. This was the first UPBA season I was a part of, but one of the millionth leagues ran by Jack that I've been a part of. This was my quote rain team, and I always say, I've been saying it, this is not a rain team. It sort of is, but it doesn't rely on rain. And the big thing here is the Ferrothorn Pelipper defensive core. Obviously those two synergize very well together, and I have good pivot options to get into my big breakers that I had on this team. Thundurus did absolutely amazing, was like top 3 in kills I believe when the season ended. Dracovish, while I did learn it was more of a matchup dependent mon this way, when it has a good matchup it is very, very strong. I did make transactions with this team. I did have Alakazam initially, and Colossal, and I have Lycanroc and Xatu by the end. Xatu sucks, Xatu's ass, I've been saying that and it still is. It has some good other niche options as well, like Piloswine to support defensively, Grimmsnarl to support defensively or offensively. Same thing with Poltegeist offensively. Lycanroc is absolutely amazing. A mon that was slept on for most of the gen. I think people started to finally pick up on it midway through the end of the gen, how good Lycanroc Dusk is. I just think that mon is really cracked. And obviously we can't go looking at this awesome quote rain team without the god itself, Spheal. This team has a Spheal, and I mentioned that because A, it's Sphealical, and B, I brought it to a game and I got 2 kills. So god man, that was one of the most fun games I've played in a bit. Unfortunately, I did not have as much success with this team compared to UPA, hence Season 2, because we won the championship, and this league we did lose in quarterfinals I believe. But again, the team was very fun. Every mon on the team was pretty enjoyable besides Xatu, I guess. I could see myself drafting most of these mons. And maybe, I don't know about Dracovish. I probably will realistically draft Dracovish again at some point. But all around, really fun team. I don't have too much else to say about this. I had a lot of fun games with it. And yeah, that's a number 7. So we can move on to number 6 now, which is PTL Season 6. This is another league I did not upload. I did upload the finals to this team because we did make grand finals, and unfortunately this was our one finals game this gen where we just hard lost. We played terrible, but you know, it is what it is. This is the team we used the whole time, no transactions. This the format is what's interesting here. This was Nat decks right after Isle of Armor, but before Crown Tundra. Why is that important? Well, if you guys don't remember, there was a bunch of leaks going around at that time on what Mons got what moves and everything. And there were quite a bit of number of showdown leagues that were stuff like, let's use the most easy example, Tabu Koko with Play Rough and Close Combat. It was leaked that Mon was going to have that. So what did PTL do? So we decided that we were not going to use any of the moves just because they were not officially confirmed, but we are also not going to use past moves like Hidden Power, Pursuit, stuff like that. Why is that relevant now? I have a Zapdos on this team. If you guys don't know, last generation, Zapdos didn't get Hurricane. So, this Zapdos on this team does not have Hurricane because it was before the Crown Tundra, and even though it was leaked, we did not use those moves, but it was after Gen 7, so I can't use Hidden Power either. So frankly, this is arguably one of the worst Zapdoses ever. You can see that as a downfall of this team, but Zapdos still fit this team pretty well. I told myself I wish Thundurus was there, but realistically, the defensive utility that Zapdos brought throughout the season was very good. A lot of fun mons on this team. I've always been a big Cobalion stan, and it's no different here. Cobalion kicked absolute ass with this team. Same with Silvally. Nidoking was not a shocker. It felt like Nidoking when I drafted it. I thought it was going to be a mon that I wasn't going to enjoy, even though I know it's good. But I had a lot of fun with it. It generally surprised me how much I enjoyed Nidoking quite a bit. I haven't drafted a Nido since, but it's on the boards of what I'll be drafting again soon. The only negative thing about this team was that Sylveon was hard pressed into a defensive role, which honestly I guess is fine. Not the greatest, but obviously if everything else on your team is expandable, then I think it's fine, honestly. But this was sort of like my I needed a break type of league, hence why I didn't upload it. There was a big gap in between my Wi-Fi Gen 8 debut and Showdown League that I stopped uploading, and this league was like right in the middle. This league also had a what's it called, like a 20-week playoff season. It wasn't that long, but it was way too long. And I remember at the beginning I was all like, damn, I'm gonna feel bad for the guy who makes it all the way to finals and loses, and that was me. So that is what it is. I had a lot of fun games with this team, a very consistent team, and it's a number 6 spot. So moving on to number 5 is going to be PCP Season 6. Now there's an asterisk there. Probably wondering why is there an asterisk? Well, this is the first league I did in Gen 8, so that's pretty exciting. A fresh look into the generation, and there's only a Cramorant in terms of new mons. But this was like, you know, the initial Galar decks before all of the Isle of Armor and all the DLCs came out. And I say it's an asterisk because we drafted 2 teams for this season. The first half of this season had this team that you're seeing now, and then we switched to national decks midway through. We established, you know, day one that's what we were going to do at some point, so I was completely okay with that. Just, you know, get a feel for Galar decks, and then also get a feel for national decks in the same league. I'm using the first team specifically because I thought my second team wasn't nearly as good in terms of what was, you know, around at the time. So, probably looking at this team, it's like, you've put this at number 5. This team looks hard mid. And obviously, just like my PTL Civil War team, if you drop this team right now, it would be pretty bad, admittedly. But the synergy that I hard planned for this league because I really wanted to do well starting in that generation. And we did pretty well in this league. The only reason that we didn't, I hard choked in semifinals, if you guys go back and look. And almost every other game, we basically won, which was really, really exciting. The triple core of Conk, Pharaoh, Salazzle, at this point in the generation, was crazy to me personally. I think Salazzle's one of my favorite mons of all time. and I will always hype that Mon up. But Salazzle, early in the gen, I think was a completely different monster. Same with Conkeldurr, Ferrothorn as well. And the reason I mention this is because at the beginning of the gen, most Mons lost Toxic. So I had Ferrothorn and Mandibuzz with the newly heavy-duty boots, so I brought that quite a bit, and they both had access to Toxic still. So if I had to go up against any defensive teams at Mons trying out, new Mons from the generation, I had a huge advantage. Not the sense that I had a Conch, Salazzle, and Guard as well, who can deal with offense and defense. So I really filled like every hole I potentially could have with this team. And the synergy I ended up having Flygon too, which I thought was really good here. A few other Mons, Claydol for a hazard support, because that also wasn't really around. Raichu for a speed tier, and Jellicent just generally good with the Mandibuzz and the Ferrothorn. This team had everything, it really did. Again, only got to use it for like 5 weeks, and then the next half of it was like a NetDex team, where I still kept good core pieces of this team. I kept Conch, Ferro, Salazzle, but other things did leave, and it did make the team a little bit worse. But the point being was that I went 5-0 with that when I had it, and I had a lot of fun, arguably some of the most fun I've had, and I'm excited for Gen 9, to where I'm thinking maybe it might be limited at first, and I can make something like this again, and it'll be really good, but maybe with new Mons this time. But that is going to be number 5. I mentioned earlier, I think the top 4 are, there's a big jump from 5 to 4, so I'm going to have a little bit more to say about these teams. We're about like 21 minutes in. I'm going to try and keep this video under 35 minutes. I just like to talk a bit. So let's move on to number 4. So coming in at number 4, it is UPBA Season 4, the team I most recently used on the YouTube channel. I did upload this league as a whole, and this team I thought was very good. A big step up from Season 2, and a lot of different Mons with really good synergy. Let's talk about it. This is one of the first teams where I completely foregoed a defensive, solid, sturdy backbone, and just went with pivots and offense, which I think suits Galar Dex Wi-Fi a lot more than something like Showdown or National Dex in any sort. I picked up Rotom Wash Valley. These are the two pivots I am definitely the most comfortable with, and I picked up a lot of Mons that can sort of tank hits but aren't like walls. For example, like Caparajah can always take a hit, but you don't want to force it to be a wall. Same with the Garchomp, the Moltres. Good offensive options. This was an S tier league, and I got Libero Cinderace. So Cinderace once again making the list here, and it fit this team really well. Rotom Silvally is a really good pairing for it. And what I learned with this team is that my top 6 have insane synergy. I took a little bit of a gamble. I had my first 3 picks and Silvally, and I really wanted to use Spectrier. So I decided, let me just throw it on this team. It was still around. So I picked it up, and then I got Moltres G right after. And those two, adding it to those 4, was the greatest decision I ever made. Spectrier, Moltres, insane synergy. Moltres G, I could talk about forever. That Mon surpassed my expectations. Being a Mandibuzz lover, I always thought I'm not going to enjoy this Mon that much. Moltres G was by far my favorite Mon on this team, at least for this specific season. And Spectrier, also very strong in S tier, and it gave me a lot of strong options versus the cast of S tiers allowed. Obviously Cinderace was good itself. I'm just hyping up my top 6 quite a bit here. Caparajah did provide some really crucial utility, being a steel type obviously. Having rocks, because our Garchomp and Caparajah were my only rockers on this team. I have Qwilfish. I did drop Surfetch just because I felt like it wasn't offering me too much. Qwilfish hazards added to that more. Slurpuff webs. And Abomasnow synergy with my top 6 was also very strong. It didn't have a matchup every week, but when it did, Abomasnow actually put in work some of the weeks, which was really impressive to me. I think the biggest downside of this team, I loved every Mon here. Beartick I didn't have much expectations for, so I'll give it some slack. I think Slurpuff's pretty bad. At least I didn't really enjoy it here personally. Web support was nice once or twice, and always pressuring with it is nice, though maybe a better fairy on this team could have been better. And I think this team's a lot more geared towards Cinderace over Garchomp. Garchomp I wasn't the biggest fan of personally. Obviously Garchomp's amazing, but I felt like it was a lot better defensively on this team, while offensively I felt like it sort of struggled because I already had Cinderace, I had Raj that sometimes honestly did its job a little bit better, and it was always kind of like in an awkward spot. But again, very, very good on this team still. Plenty of win cons. I could talk about this team forever. It's fresh in my mind, but we need to move on with this list. And we're going to move on to our top 3. Very exciting. Number 3 is APM Ubers. And this team was used quite a bit ago. This was one of the teams. There was like a small break I had between Showdown and Wi-Fi. There was like kind of that awkward grace period, like smack in the middle of COVID, I believe. And this was the team I was using, one of them. This team was obviously, like, it looks crazy, but this is Jet Tiers. So if you guys don't know about APM, I talked about APM a lot last gen because I was in APM a lot last gen. And I was in this gen too, but I didn't really like my teams. But this team I really enjoyed. But Jet Tiers are kind of cracked, right? Every team's crazy. I have Ho-Oh, Mega Scizor, Latios, Clefable, Weavile. Like, goddamn. And that's Dugtrio with Arena Trap. Like, this team just, that kind of covers each other really, really well. Insanely strong Fairy Dragon Steel Core. And I don't look at cores as much as I used to, but I think this is just, you know, just really, really strong here. Ho-Oh, arguably one of the best, like, counter Ubers in the draft format, at least. I know in regular standard, you know, Ubers, it's not as good. But, you know, Ho-Oh does have a good matchup versus a good cast of the Ubers list. So I thought that was the reason why I drafted that mon. And I have no regrets. Ho-Oh was a lot of fun. Heavy Duty Boots is just almost unkillable. And I have so many mons that help support it. Other things that were really impressive with this team. The unique rule with this league was that I have a Mega user, a Z Crystal user, and a Dynamax user. But you can only bring one to a game. Obviously, most weeks I brought my Mega because Mega Scizor with this team was very strong. My Z user was Xurkitree. I did bring that once or twice. And my Dynamax captain was Seismitoad, which frankly I think I only brought once. And I think it did stuff, if I remember. It's been a bit. But, again, I think the synergy with this team is very strong. Every mon individually here has a good standing. And even my lowest tier mon, Cofagrigus, this is kind of like Moltres G for UPBA. I was very impressed with Cofagrigus in this league and how well it can tank hits and the utility it can provide me. I thoroughly enjoyed this mon. I think the only reason I haven't drafted it is because I haven't had a team where I felt as if I needed a defensive like ghost near the end. And if I did, I would always go Cofagrigus 10 out of 10 every time. It is such a strong mon. Tanks hits like a champ. And this team just has so many late game options and so many ways I can still support it early game. Like, if I go Swords Dance Scizor, I could, you know, that could be an end game, but I could also just make it Spadef and make it really annoying throughout a game. Arena Trap, you know, trapping them steals that, well, steal isn't really a big threat, but could open up Lottie and Clef. You get the gist, right? Very, very strong team. All the teams were strong, but I personally thought mine was definitely up there. That's number 3. We're moving into our top 2. Hopefully you guys enjoyed so far. I'm rambling on quite a lot, so sorry about that. But number 2, here we go. These two were tough to put. Number 2 and 1 were pretty interchangeable, but my number 2, my second favorite team this generation, was BBL Season 7. This was something else. This was a season. I was craving to do Ubers for quite a long time at this point because the gap between APM Ubers and BBL was at least a year and a half, and I just really wanted to do it. I've been watching BBL for quite a bit. I watched Season 2 when it was like really, really popular with like Gypsy and all of them, and then I watched a few seasons after that. I watched Season 3 for a bit. Season 4 or 5 was like on Showdown, and I didn't really watch that. But point being is that, you know, I've heard of BBL, and I've, you know, getting on Ubers League, this was kind of the league I wanted to be a part of because it's, you know, really well done. Liv knows her shit when it comes to, you know, actually tiering Ubers, and, you know, because you do it for so many seasons, you get a good grasp on what's, you know, good and what's not. And this is the team we got. The big thing about this team, I was 10th in the draft and I got Lunala, which was insane considering Yveltal wasn't allowed, Kyogre wasn't allowed, none of like that broken stuff was allowed. So getting it that low was really good. Other really good things. Everything about this team. Coco, Melmetal, really, really strong core with Mandibuzz and Mamo. I think having Mandibuzz with Lunala is really strong because Manabuzz is arguably the best defensive Dark in the game, and having a way to check Ghosts and Darks that beat you Lunala is very, very strong. I have good hazard control, which if I don't want to have to force Lunala to be Boots. This team made it to where I'm not forced to run Boots on Lunala, I'm not forced to run a certain set. Same thing with Koko as well, which was insane to me. Koko wasn't forced into a role at any point in the season, which is really strong. Melmetal, really strong in Ubers, I think, personally, just because of its typing. A lot of Dragon and Flyings running around. You're always able to tank one hit, and you don't need to invest to be able to hit super, super hard back. In Ubers League, at least in a format like this, you typically don't have a defensive backbone, but I did have defensive options. Again, Melmetal, Manabuzz, Seismitoad, Weezing, all had their niche matchup. Weezing had its niche matchup, Seismitoad did as well. Rotom didn't really all that much, but it did come to finals, which we did win a finals with this. Reboot came to 1 or 2 games, and it was actually not that bad. Drampa, luckiest Drampa in the world, but also fit this team pretty well. I felt as if, back to Melmetal, I felt as if it wasn't that pressured, because when you have to prep for Lunala and Koko, you prep for them first, and then Melmetal. And there's a Mamoswine there too, which we didn't even talk about. Very strong offensive presence with this team. A lot of different options, and I have enough of a backbone to support these mons. Hawlucha's ass, that's the only bad thing about this team. It was bad here. The only reason I have it is because it was worth like 12 or 11 points. And honestly, with Koko, I know it's Ubers, but you know what? 11-point Hawlucha, I need a fighting type. There was nothing left. I'll take it, okay? So, that's the one thing about this team that I was whatever about. Lunala, Omega strong Uber. Ho and Lunala being the Ubers I've used, just, you know, good resume for Uber so far. That is our number 2 team, because there is one more team that I enjoy just slightly more than this team. Just barely. And that is going to be, drumroll please, UPA Season 1. This is my favorite team I used all generation. There is a lot of story to this team, and I will quickly go through it as, again, just my favorite team. This was a Gigantamax League. This was the one and only G-Max League I did. Obviously, we did some leagues I had mentioned already where, you know, APM Ubers, you could Dynamax like one of the lower tiers. Stuff like that. I know one of the APM tournaments, you could Dynamax, like I had Hippopotas, for example. But this league, you know, fully fledged on the G-Max board. Could hold items if I wanted to, so I could hold Boots every week on Zard. And it was very, very strong. I got first overall pick in this draft, hence why I have this mon. Now, why is this team so important? This team means a bit to me because during that draft, like that little phase period in the height, like in the middle of COVID, and the fact that I was kind of getting a little sick of draft for a little bit there, and I needed something that made me more interested again. I wasn't sure what it was at first, and I decided, let me give Wi-Fi a try. I can invest in an Elgato, or I think I had an Elgato at that point, and I couldn't record last generation. So this gen, I wanted to get more into Wi-Fi, and now this was kind of my chance. I got invited to UPA by, I think, Shay or JB, one of the two, or Dorian, you know, they ran it, and, you know, it's G-Max. And this was the league that I see in my eyes kind of brought together a community that I really love today. Prep City I'm talking about. I met JV here, I met Q, Cahoots, you know, the whole gang. This is the first time I, you know, met them. And this is my first time really dabbling into the Wi-Fi scene, as I've played Wi-Fi before, but I wasn't really a part of the scene. And, you know, jumping on board to this really meant a lot to me. It formed a community, and I've spent like 2 minutes just talking about that, not even the team. The team is insane, look at it. Pharaoh and Rotom, very strong core. I am a huge fan of this defensive pivot-ish core. Crocodile to support it is insane. I think the top 4 here just, like, they came like every week. They're just so good. And then every other mon had a role on this team. Dragalge provided a very important typing and utility and toxic spikes. Froslass had a good speed tier. Comfey had priority that I always like. I always like having a priority user, and Comfey's no different. Sigilyph was my defogger and another breaking option. It was probably like the least important mon on the team, but still had an important role to some extent. Cinccino, good speed tier. Throw was a very good defensive piece to this team. When Pharaoh and Rotom struggled, throw was always there to just tank hits and just, you know, throw that ass in a circle and knock stuff off, right? And then we can't go without talking about Stone Journer. Not a mean pick, actually came to a few games, came to the finals, and had an impact in the finals, which is crazy. But this was my getting back into Draft League, getting back into the groove. Had a lot of fun. The community was great during this time, and we had a lot of success with this team. We lost 2 games. One of them was we missed the Stone Edge in a JB's game, and we hard lost to Toxicity GMAX in 1 game. So it was really fun being able to navigate throughout the GMAXs. How are we going to prep for this one this week? How are we going to prep for this one the next week? Does this GMAX beat my GMAX? Do I have defensive counterplay? Stuff like that. And I had a lot of fun the whole season, all the way through. And that's what made me really enjoy this team quite a lot. So even though I talked about not the team as much as some of the others, again, very, very strong team. GMAX Zard is broken. And this was my favorite team of the generation. So that is going to wrap it up for this top 10 list. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this quite a bit. This video is right around 35 minutes long, so I'm going to try not to ramble on anymore. Sorry if you guys start snoozing a bit, but I just wanted to, you know, talk about what I drafted this generation. And what did you guys like? Do you think UPA Season 1 was the best team I drafted this gen? Was it BBL? Was it another team? You know, who knows? I would love to hear what you guys have to think in the comment section below. I think I might do these every other week just because I'm currently in college and I'm working, so it's a little bit tough to produce content at the moment. So let me hear you guys your ideas for top 10. Any other ideas in general are also appreciated, but that's kind of what I'm going to sort of be sticking to. And hopefully I can improve the quality of these videos as they go on. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching. Your support means the world to me. And without all that, I'm going to head out. Have a fantastic day, YouTube.